So Shabbat Shalom to all those people who are on YouTube, wishing you a wonderful Shabbat. We're going to begin to let people in and to welcome all of those people to our service tonight. And we want to say just Shabbat Shalom to all of those who are gathered here, and wishing you a Shabbat of rest, a Shabbat of peace, a Shabbat of wholeness, as we prepare to continue with our service. So you're going to see in the chat, we're going to be putting our prayer book, and we're going to begin on page 10. If we did this right, it should automatically be going to page 10, but otherwise you can find a counter on the bottom, which will help you. And by all means, feel free to toggle on the upper right-hand part of your screen where it says view, either between me, who's going to be spotlighted, and our clergy associate, Ronnie Pressman, who will sometimes be spotlighted, or the group of our congregation. And we want to welcome Tyler, who I see already in the screen. And very soon, he's going to become bar mitzvah tomorrow. He and his family are going to light our candles and are going to bless our wine. And so we're going to continue. We are beginning on page number 10 as we join together in the words of Hine Matov. Hine matov manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim. 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 Shevet achim gam yachad. Next song on that page number 10, if you just joined us. Maya v'hayom Shabbat Shalom. Maya v'hayom Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya v'hayom Shabbat Shalom. Maya v'hayom Shabbat Shalom. Last time, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. There are many reasons why we light our Shabbat candles, right? Sometimes we light our Shabbat candles to symbolize the fact that God gave two different commandments for Shabbat in the Bible. That in the book of Exodus, God said, Shamor et Shabbat, that we should keep Shabbat, and that in Deuteronomy, God said, Zachor et Shabbat. But there are other reasons too. And potentially, we light two candles to remind ourselves of the two great lights in our life, the sun and the moon. And to see the interplay between the light and the dark, between the night and the day. And we see more than anything else how they merge together on Erev Shabbat. And so with our hearts, we can, in a way, when we light our candles, shine those great lights on people who need light. There's so many people in our own lives who need light, who need to be enlivened, who need their hearts filled up. And so what I want to ask you to do is, as we call Tyler to the screen, and Tyler and his family light our Shabbat candles, I want you to think of all of those people in your life who need light. I want you to send light to them. And then I want you to, in the chat, talk about some of the people in our world who could use a little bit of light right now. And so, Tyler, whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready, you can light the candles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. And we move now to page number 5 as Tyler leads us in the prayer over our wine, our Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom tehillah L'mikra'e kodesh, zeher litziat mitzrayim, kivanu vaharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amin, v'shabbat kodsheha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinhaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
So, Tyler, we're going to say goodbye to you briefly because tomorrow we're going to call you up as a bar mitzvah for the very first time to the Bima. And we can't be more proud and excited for you. So Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
And so we're going to turn to page number 20, and I want to invite us, remember, to type in those people that we're thinking of, both Mazel Tov, of course, to Tyler and his family, but also people that you want to add a little bit of light to. Who do you want to shine light to in your lives? So we're on page number 20. Likrat Shabbat v'chune nelcha ki hi mekor ha'beracha mirosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'man Shabbat chila lechadodi likrat kala yananai 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 mene Shabbat kabela yai Kabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, hitoreri, kiva ore, umi uri, 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 shidaveri, kevoda donai, Allah yignigla, lechadodili katkala, yananai, 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 ere Shabbat. I want to invite us to rise. We're on verse number 9. Bori v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvetzola toch emune am sigula boi kala lechanoi likrat kala yananai 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 bene Shabbat bekabela yai dai dai lechanoi likrat kala yananai 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 bene Shabbat bekabela yanai nai yananai nai yanai nai nai yanai nai yananai nai 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 yanai nai yananai nai 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 yadai nai nananai nai 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 nai. I'm going to invite us to rise together, and we are going to turn now to the Chatzi Kaddish, which you can find together on page number 26. Please rise.
Yitgadav yitgadash shemei Rabbah v'yalmad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechonu v'yamechonu v'chayedecha beit Yisrael b'hagala u'vizman kariv v'yimeru amen. Yesh merabah mevarach le'olam u'lamei hamaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'rechu le'la mikol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran b'yalama v'yimeru amen.
We're going to move forward in our prayer book. We're on page 28. Yai nai nai yai nai 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 yai nai 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 yai nai nai yai nai 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 yai nai 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 yai nai 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 et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed Yai nai nai We're seated together.
Turn to page 31. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or shall we cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is an hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim.
Ahavat olam, Yisrael, Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, u'mishpatim, otanu lemadeta, otanu lemadeta. Akein Adonai Eloheinu b'shofenu, u'kumenu nasiach behugecha, v'nizmach b'divrei toratecha, u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, v'yorek yameinu, uvahem negeyom v'layla, negeyom v'layla. V'ahavatcha al tasir, v'imenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael, ohev amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha b'veitecha uv'lektecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumbecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet.
We're going to join together now. We're on page number 40 as we sing the song the Israelites sang as they crossed the sea. Mi chamocha. Yain and nine, 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 nine. Yain and nine, 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 nine. Yain and nine, 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 nine. Yain and nine, 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 nine. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora te'ilo osefele. Nora te'ilo osefele. Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Malchutecha uvanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam. Ze Elianu ve'amru, Ze Elianu ve'amru, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Yananai, sing with me. Yananai, nai, 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 na, 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 na. Yaina nine 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 nine. Yaina nine 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 nine. Yaina nine 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 nine. Yaina na na nine. We move forward now. We're on page 42 as we join together in the words of Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomrei Nu Lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomrei Nu Lechaim. Middle of that page. Ushmor Seitenu Uvoenu Lechaim Ushalom Be'ata v'yad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomrei Nu Lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomrei Nu Lechaim. So we rise together now as we turn to page number 46. And we move into our silent Amidah, first with this opening meditation, asking God to open our lips as we move in then to silence, praying either the words on the page or the words in our hearts through page number 60.
Open my eyes to truth. Open my hands to give freely. Open my lips to good words, to pure words. Open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth. Open my hands to give freely. Open my lips to good words, to pure words. Open my heart to love. Adonai sefatay tiftach, ufi hagid tehilatecha. Open my lips to good words, to pure words. Open my heart to love.
We're on page number 62. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, say shalom, Elenu with me. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, say shalom, Elenu ve'algu Yisrael ve'imeru. Oh, say shalom, bimroma, say shalom, Elenu ve'algu Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. And so now that we've prayed for a little bit of peace, we also pray for this kind of personal peace that we all need, for a peace and a healing and a wholeness that we yearn for. And so we're going to move into our Mishabarak prayer, our prayer for healing, as we recall all the names of those people who we hold in our hearts who are in need of healing. And so in a moment, we're going to call up a screen that's going to have the names of all of those in our community that we're praying for tonight. But I'll invite you to put names of those that you are thinking of in the chat as well.
Mikor habracha v'imotenu, may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishabarak imotenu, mikor habracha le'avotenu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Shabbat shalom. I want to do something that I actually have not done maybe ever in this pandemic, which is that I actually want to kind of host a discussion here in the community. Because I think I'm going to ask a question and I would love to hear your responses. I'm going to ask the question to give you a chance to think about it a little bit, and then I'm going to kind of expand on the question, which is, when would you say that the Jewish people officially began? Now, the question about when things begin can be actually really fraught. And I'll give you an example from the Talmud. There are two rabbis, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, who famously were best friends, and so close actually that they had this companionship that when their friendship ended, it actually broke them both. Yochanan passed away. Actually, Reish Lakish passed away, and Yochanan was left completely broken. So much so that he basically gave up. Now, the question that you might be asking is what caused their friendship to break up? And it was actually the conversation about when something officially begins and when something officially ends. Now, it's a funny little section because you're going to think about this and you're going to think like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why would somebody fight over this? The question was about, if I'm making a sword, when is the sword officially a sword, right? When does it go from a hunk of metal and become a sword itself? And so one of them said, you know what? A sword is a sword when you put it in the fire and take it out of the fire. As soon as you take it out of the fire, that is now a sword. And the other said, no, a sword is a sword when you hit its final blow with a hammer. Now, it may sound silly to you, but I want to rephrase the question slightly. Instead of talking about a sword, what I want to ask you about is, when did America begin? And by the way, this is a question that's incredibly fraught. It's a question that I had a recent conversation with somebody in our community about this past week. And in fact, I even brought up in our Melton class, for those who are in our Melton, we might remember this, right? We have decided that the official beginning of America is 1776, right? When a group of people go to Philadelphia, the Declaration of Independence is signed, and deciding that we're going to go to war with Britain and declaring our independence, that becomes the official beginning of America. But that is actually a decision. That's not self-evident. In the way that it's not self-evident whether a sword is created because it's taken out of the fire or the last blow of the hammer, right? You could, instead of picking 1776, pick 1781, right? Which is the year that we won the Battle of Yorktown and we were officially done, right? Then we don't have Britain on our back, except that we didn't sign the treaty until 1783, and potentially that is the beginning of America, right? Or maybe we're talking 1789 when the Constitution comes about. The Constitution being our founding document, and that's what makes us America. Then again, maybe we throw all that out and we look at America instead of this kind of beginning battle with Great Britain. We talk about the beginning of America is when the first settlers landed on our shores, or when in 1620, I think was the year, the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. Or maybe America is 1619, the first year that slaves were brought, because we're defined actually by the things that we're trying to get away from, by our struggles. That becomes the founding of America. Or maybe we're talking after the Civil War, when finally there were no slaves. Even that June 19th date, when the final group of people learned that they were free in America. It is not self-evident, the beginnings. We take for granted what others tell us, but it's worth asking the question, what is the official start? And if you notice, it's fraught. It's fraught, for example, to take away 1776 and put 1619 down. It's fraught to go all the way back to the Pilgrims. It is fraught to discount the Declaration of Independence and decide that the official beginning is actually the Constitution. All of these decisions are fraught because it changes the fabric of who we are and the character of our identity. So what I want to ask you is, what is the official start of the Jewish people? Did it happen last week? Did it happen in this week's portion? Does it happen in a future portion? And so look, I could ask you to put these into the chat. And by all means, if you've got ideas that you want in the chat, feel free to put them into the chat. But I would actually love to be able to call on you. So if you want to raise your hand, go down into the icons down below, and you can actually raise your hand and I will unmute you and give you a chance to tell everyone what for you is the official beginning of the Jewish people. What part of the stories of Genesis, of Exodus, of Numbers, of Deuteronomy, of after the Bible continues on when the Torah, the first 5 books, have ended? What is the official beginning of the Jewish people? Anybody want to answer? Yes, I see Stan raised his hand. So we'll give everybody the chance if you want to unmute yourself. So Stan, unmute yourself. What is the official beginning? And I can't see every screen, so you will have to either put in the chat, I want to speak, or something like that. Yes, Stan.
Well, I think the beginning of the Jewish people began with where Abraham is summoned by God to go forth and build a mighty nation and build a mighty people.
Okay. So in one or two sentences, why that one?
Because in the parsha itself, Lech Lecha, there's a specific reference to Abraham HaIvri, which means Abraham the Hebrew. And to me, the Hebrew nation and the Jewish nation are one and the same.
Okay, wonderful. So Marge wrote something different than Stan said, right? Marge said, when we accept the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai. So Marge, if you'll unmute yourself, why when we accept the 10 Commandments?
Because to me, while we are people, we have the ethics and the morality of Torah is what's critical to turn us into a people.
Awesome. Awesome. So we've got, look, the very beginning, right? When Stan says God calls Abraham. We've got when we are standing at the foot of Mount Sinai and we get the law. Miriam has a different opinion. So Miriam, what's your opinion? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out. So, my first thought was Abraham, right? I thought, oh, okay, he's the first Jew. There we go. There we go. But then I thought, well, but our origin story is about going through the desert together, and we become a people in the desert. And then, but I'm still not sure, because the generation of the desert dies off, and purposefully, God decides that they're not the ones who are going to go into the land and populate the land. So, we are constantly evolving. So I don't have an answer to the question.
So what you're saying is there is no beginning, right? So you can even apply this to America right now. America is constantly becoming. So just because you pick 1776 or something like that, we are constantly having new beginnings over and over and over again, right? We're going to have a new president. Hopefully a pandemic is going to end soon. Is America made anew in each generation? It's a great question. And it's a great question about the Jewish people as well. Now we have an answer when Eve ate the apple. The beginning of the Jewish people is all the way the beginning of humanity. So why don't you unmute yourself and explain why, Johanna?
Okay, I think when Eve ate the apple, because that's when Adam and Eve started wrestling with God. And I always love how Judaism has to do with wrestling with God. And that's one of the first moments that they started to do that really clearly.
So for you, it's kind of emblematic of the kind of Jewish gestalt, right? This Jewish feel of pushing and pulling against God. I love it. Yeah. Let's go with one more. Bruce had one. He said the golden calf. So Bruce, why the golden calf? Which, by the way, is maybe our 1619, right? A little bit on left field, but also potentially really powerful.
Well, like Adam and Eve and Eve eating the apple, that with being a people comes responsibility. And with responsibility comes penalty, that there is a rule of law and there's a rule of ethical morality. And God told the Jewish people around the golden calf that there are rules that you need to follow, and there'll be consequences if you don't.
So the first mistake puts us actually on the right path, right?
Yeah.
So I want to actually challenge us to think that potentially this week's Torah portion has two of those answers in it. And I actually think potentially that the second answer that I'm about to say is a real contender. The first, by the way, is something Tyler's going to speak about tomorrow, right? After Sarah dies, and by the way, the name of our portion is Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, and it really begins with Sarah's death. Abraham goes and he purchases the first piece of land that the Jewish people have ever owned in the land of Israel. He goes to Ephraim and he says to him, look, I'd like to buy this land. Ephraim offers it for free. Abraham says, I want to pay. I demand to pay. And Tyler tomorrow is going to explain why he thinks Abraham demands to pay. But he gets a deed to the cave of Machpelah, and that becomes the first notion that the Jewish people have a place in the land of Israel. The second potential is the idea that actually Abraham could have been an anomaly. And you find this for anyone who's a grandparent. I've talked to many grandparents who basically said, I know my family will survive and my legacy is secure, not because I have children, but because I have grandchildren, right? Because I watch my children get married, I see my children have children, and I see that this line is coming down, right? And so in this week's portion, you watch as Abraham sends his servant Eliezer out into the desert to go find a wife for Isaac, and Isaac meets Rebekah, and they get married and they fall in love. And then in next week's portion, Toldot, though the seeds are planted in this week's portion, Abraham's grandchild is born, which then continues on the line. Now, the reason I bring these two out is because, as I said, the answer to the question of when the Jewish people begin is itself a litmus test. And in this particular case, just like American identity is, this is a litmus test for what you think your own Jewish identity is. So, for example, if it's about the land of Israel, if it's about nation building, and you can, by the way, find that answer and the being freed from Egypt answer all together into the question of nation, right? What makes the Jewish people a national identity? That's going to affect your own relationship to Judaism. I have, by the way, conversations, and I begin every single confirmation class, the first two classes, with unpacking the question is, what is a Jew and what is Judaism, right? Is it a religion? Is it a culture? Is it an ethnicity? Is it a nation? Is it a family, right? If, for example, it's about Abraham's grandchildren being born, the line continuing, a next generation coming about, you're going to actually be in the camp of family. If it's about standing on the foot of Mount Sinai, getting the 10 commandments, getting the ethical norms, getting the religious norms, being told how to worship God, do the holidays, keep kosher, then actually religion itself is going to be that founding piece of Judaism for you. The question of when things begin is ultimately fraught because it is wrapped up fully in the question of who are we and what is our identity. And so I want to invite you to keep asking that question. Ask that question about Judaism, but ask that question about the country that we live in as well. Because as you do, you're going to find that the things that are the most important to you, the values you hold deepest, the ideals that you hold closest to your heart are going to quickly rise to the top. And you will have a litmus test on your deepest values. Shabbat Shalom. And thank you to all of those who had thoughtful comments, and I'm sure we've got many others as well. We're going to move now into our Elenu prayer. We're on page 282, and I'll invite us to rise.
Elenu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu.
Forward 5 pages in our prayer.
V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. echad.
We pause for a moment as our thoughts turn to those that we've loved and who we have lost. If you want to be seated for a moment, you can. As together we think of those who are very much in our hearts but no longer with us in this world. This Shabbat we remember Arthur Asher, Maxwell Berkowitz, Charlotte Prayer, Clara Sherashore, Mary Dell Coolidge, Rosenfeld Field, Shirley Cooper, Harriet Degenshine, Oscar Denenberg, Sidney Allen Dix, Ida Epton, Joan C. Gary, Herbert Glukoft, Herman High, Andrew Hoffman, Dennis Charles Kauf, Samuel Kimmel, Weiner Krebs, Abraham Menkes, Joseph Marshak, Leon Mello, Bessie Neuwirth, Barnett Olinger, Melvin Peck, Joshua Plout, Alan Carey Plutz, Sidney Protas, Benny Patazik, Fanny Patazik, Dan Rakis, Sanders Rosenblum, Walter Rakowski, Rose Sherman, Rita Silverman, Sydney Singman, Francis Singman, Julius Skolnick, Harry Spirit, Emil Unger Leiter, and Ruth Ziff. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning, Benjamin and Meg Arbor, cousin of Brian Arbor, June Mintz, godmother of Brian Arbor, and Mark Grayson, brother of Paul Grayson. In addition, I'll invite you to share the name of anyone that you're observing a yard site that may not have been on this list, or anyone for whom you're thinking about in your 1 year of mourning. We join together in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, again, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon uv'yom echon uv'chayet l'chol beit Yisrael, b'gala uv'yizman kariv v'imru amin. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei almaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram b'yama v'imru amin. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'oko Yisrael v'imru amin. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'oko Yisrael v'imru amin. Please be seated. So before I share a few announcements, I want to turn things over to Ronnie if she has any announcements that she wants to share.
This Tuesday, November 17th at 7:00 p.m., we will be hosting a Rosh Chodesh gathering, and our guest this month is Nessa Rappaport, who will be talking about a book that she had written called Evening. She's been with us before. She's a joy to be with, and her writing is spectacular. And we will start off with a ritual of our lighting and our blessing of the moon. And outside of that, I know that there's yoga tomorrow morning, and there's Torah study tomorrow morning, and Tyler will be coming bar mitzvah tomorrow morning.
Awesome. And on Monday night, there's a really big program happening. We've got Parker Palmer, who's a really important voice in kind of the world, spiritual world. He's Protestant, and Jim Johnson, who is an important voice on racial justice, in conversation with each other about kind of the spirituality of doing racial justice work. And so that's going to be on Monday night, and I hope you can join us for that. And we've got a host of other programs dealing around questions of racial justice that are coming up very soon. We have a guest speaker on racial justice on the Friday night of the 4th. And we have our film festival is going to be themed around that. And so make sure, take a look at our Garrett and all the stuff that's happening throughout the course of the next few weeks. And so we are going to conclude today with the singing of Adon Olam, which you can find on page 321, page 321. As you're going to that, Hanukkah is also around the corner. So you're going to get an email this week that's going to spell out all the different things that we're doing for Hanukkah. We are going to do a bunch of very small lightings, but many of them over the course of the week. So it's going to be themed. The twos in the preschool at 5:30, the fifth grade class, at 6:30. One day, just a community lighting, but it's going to be outside the congregation. So bundle up. We bought either an electric menorah, depending on the weather or and the wind, or we've got a very large menorah that we can light. And so we hope that you'll join us for at least one of these lightings so that we can safely together in small groups over the course of the holiday. Every single person gets a chance to come together. So we're page 321. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nibra Li'ed Nasa V'Chesed Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yacharek Kiklot HaKol Levado Imlo Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Oveh Vehu Yeh B'Tifara Vehu Yeh B'Tifara Vehu Echad V'Ein Sheni Lehamshilo Lehakira V'Li Reichi V'Li Tachlit V'Lo Ha'oz V'Hamisra V'Lo Ha'oz V'Hamisra Vehu Eli V'Chai Goali V'Tzor Chemli B'Tzara Vehu Nisi Umanos Li Menakosi V'Yom Ekra Menakosi V'Yom Ekra Bi'ado Afkid Ruhi V'Tishan V'Ayira Ve'im Ruhi Geviati Adonai Li Velo Ira Adonai Li Velo Ira. So if everybody wants to put themselves on gallery, and I want to invite everyone to unmute and to say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Shalom, everybody.
You guys keep me going. You guys keep me going.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Stan.
Shabbat shalom.